Thank you for finding time for us. Thank you for your warm welcome. This is one of your offices here, or is it your main office? No, we have two more offices. What do you think about the economic situation in Russia? Well, I'm not much of an economist. I can say just a few words, my feeling towards that. There is a standby situation concerning the election process, and when we talk about the general economic situation in Russia, well, at least Russia doesn't have any debts. Oil and gas resources are rising. We have a lot of natural resources. I think that after the elections and after the stabilization process in the government and in ministry circles, we will see. Well, the next term is 6 years, as you know, not 4, and there will be a special conception, an idea of development of the whole country, a new strategy. And if this strategy will be developed and elaborated according to the statements that were made, then I think there will be few problems in the future. And I hope that entrepreneurship will be more active. Unfortunately, now these entrepreneurship activity is not as high as we would like it to be. It depends on tasks of the leadership of the country, and if our country will occupy not the 120th place but, for example, 30th place, it will be much more better for small and medium-sized businesses. What about the prospects? Well, you know, I'm dealing with construction and building processes. I can just say some ideas on this topic concerning construction sphere. Now, the average mortgage interest rate is 12–16%, and if this rate will go down to, for example, 3–7%, I think the demand for constructing will rise, of course. And concerning cubic meters per person in this country, it is 14–17 cubic meters. And we have a lot of potential here as well. What do you think about the prospects for construction in this country? We have a lot of facilities, a lot of objects now, but if we talk about some difficulties that exist, of course, I think that such large projects that we have now, I don't think that they will appear soon in such volumes of investments and financing. I think that any object of about 50,000 meters will need a lot of finance resources. It concerns not only banks in Europe but also in Russia. I don't think that I can talk for hours about global economic issues. It's not quite correct because I'm more in the building sphere. Everything that concerns flats and facilities, and talking about the economy in general, it is a very difficult question. We know that if we look at the mortgage, we can say a lot about the economic situation in the country. For example, in the USA, when economic analysts make their work, they always put it in the analysis. If we look at other countries, we can see that in Russia these processes are going on. I don't know how it is going to develop concerning the economic crisis. There are a lot of factors, and I don't think that any person can forecast it precisely, even for the next 2 years. I think that we can focus only for the next year, the next 18 months. It is very difficult to predict everything for these projects. We have the fourth turn for our next facility, and we are going to finish it in 18 months. Let's talk about you. You got richer during the 2000s, and do you think it is thanks to Vladimir Putin that you got richer, that you were able to build your business? Well, we were not into privatization process, and from this point of view, everything that you can see here, it is the best proof of the fact that the strategy that the government used, and Vladimir Putin in particular, I think we can see that we succeeded. Yes, it is obvious. We can't imagine that something like that could happen in the 19th. And they thought how to improve the conditions for their workers. They thought about how to make the offices better, and you can see that this strategy worked actually. I don't think that we will see those paces of growth that we witnessed. Everybody in the world understands that, because all the factors for the growth, we saw them, and we can't use them anymore. And I think that we should see to that the middle class should appear, so that people can be engaged in business, in entrepreneurship. It doesn't matter baking buns or making sausages. I know that in European countries, in the USA, about 70% of business is small and medium businesses, and in Russia this number is 25-30% of business. There is lack of service in Russia. There is lack of demand on contractors market and suppliers market. The competitiveness is quite weak here, and if we develop this side, we will have more, about 30-40% of rise for the GDP. Do you think that these opportunities, that you should thank for them Vladimir Putin? Do you think this is because of his figure? You know, we can see this building, and I can't say that we should thank Neftegaz or Putin or the whole country. It is a very difficult factor. For example, we can see a girl, and you say, "I like her eyes." We can't divide into different components and segments. If we look into the year 2000, well, to put it mildly, there were no rules of game. But now these rules exist. Companies work, and I can't say whether the Prime Minister has anything to do with it. Well, I think that in a way it depends on him as well. For example, in Germany we can't divide the factor of success of the economic growth that we saw in Germany. We can't say that it depended only on the Chancellor, on the President, or on the situation in the world, or on the ability of the German people to get together and launch new technologies for new companies. I can say that we have a great potential for growth, and if we better the economic climate and the opportunities for small businesses to launch new businesses, I think that we'll be able to rise the budget by 30-40%, and we will improve the situation with the economy in Russia. It is my opinion, of course. If we take a car, in Germany the gas pedal is already pressed, for example, for 70%, and in Russia this gas pedal is pressed at, for example, 40%. So we can still realize our potential, use it to improve the situation. The situation in the world and all these political issues concerning G8, G20, the difficult situation in Syria, in China, in Iran. This is just a forecast. Nobody can predict what future will be, what the world will look like. G8 couldn't answer this question. G20 couldn't do it as well. It depends on the finance flows. For example, the USA has a debt of $14 billion and it still issues its currency. And of course the inflation will be, dollar inflation will be, and it is reflected on the prices for oil. When we know that oil processes go on usually in a dollar, in this currency, about 70% of this processes. So, and what is the segment of inflation? What is the segment? We can't say it for sure. This is a question for economists. But I think that it is obvious that currency wars will take place because Europe, with this ratio of euro to dollar, cannot compete with the USA. It seems to me that when somebody comes now and says that he has a business plan for 5 years, I think that he is not quite in his sound mind. And if we talk about planning, when the crisis takes place, it first affects the real estate market. And all people try to save some money for improving their housing conditions in the future. And it's a great part. For example, in China, 25% is building. And in Russia, if we take all the construction matters, not only offices but also roads and buildings, it's about 40%. And we can see that this segment is very important. I can put it the other way. The crisis in 2008 began with the mortgage market. I think it began in Miami. About 95% of customers were investment customers, and that's where the problems began. In this country, the investment customers are about 15-20%. It's not that huge if we compare it to the USA or to some Arab countries where the number is 80%. So we try to limit this number, not more than 20%, because investors, they can buy, but they can also sell it the following day. Talking about prospects that exist during the elections, I'm going to support Vladimir Putin. I'm going to vote for him. I don't think that this question is quite correct, because it's not quite correct talking about who I am going to choose. He was already the president of the Russian Federation, he was the prime minister, and the odds are high that he's going to be the next president. So is it going to reflect on the stability? I think that we can talk about it only this autumn, because talking about something that doesn't exist is like talking about aliens. So, for example, this autumn you'll see what steps the government is taking. But it seems to me that all these speculations about the election is not quite bad. It means that a vast majority of the society is ready to talk about it, to discuss elections. It is good, I think. Well, talking on political matters is not quite my cup of tea. There is a good saying: politicians come and go, but builders stay and remain. The most important thing is that regardless of the authorities, of the parties in power, the business should remain intact. Concerning the situation in Russia in 90s, I don't like it when business goes into politics. We already saw it, we already witnessed it. There should be a division, a separation, and I support the idea that when we have oligarchs, and I don't think that they should be mixed. There should be a balance. Business is business, power is power. We made an analysis. If we take capitalism and socialism, if we take into account the security system, and if we look into the 90s, we remember the times when we had special food cards, when there were a long line of people staying to McDonald's. The only difference is that socialism didn't have businessmen. All these factors that you can see are made by businessmen, and they didn't exist during the socialism. I think this is quite doubtless. The fact of improving the economic situation and economic climate in the country for the business. I think that all the candidates have the same idea about it. Do you think that Vladimir Putin is a guarantor for a future business improvement and development? Well, look, at least, let's put it this way. During the previous 2 terms, I didn't see any stupid steps concerning business. And 6-year term is a great term. It used to be 4, now it's 6 years. And it will be the possibility for people to see the results. And it will be the possibility to realize all the programs that were elaborated. So it's just a question of whether they will be realized or whether they will not. Depends on the will of the leader, on his character.
You can even see the center of Moscow from here. There were those protest rallies. What do you think about them? Well, once again, I think that the mere fact that the opposition arranged to get together and to communicate their ideas, I think this is a huge step forward from the point of view of democratization, this entering World Trade Organization. But from the other hand, unfortunately, according to the things I see, the opposition doesn't have a real leader, and it is not united, it is not consolidated. So they just say everything's bad, and what changes do you want? No changes, it's simply bad. For example, yesterday the opposition met Medvedev. De facto, they only discussed the issues of the elections. Well, it's obvious that Putin will win in the first or the second round of elections, even if those are not faked. So probably the opposition need to set up a constructive dialogue with the power and try to take part in, I don't know, making new bills, in influencing some system things. I know there is some open government with different people, different views from different areas, and they can show themselves there. So, if everything's bad, just tell us how to make it good, because we have a lot of problems connected with the law. Let's be objective. Everybody understands that in the 90s, when the USSR collapsed, it's not pronounced, but in fact we lost the Third World War, the informational war, between the capitalism and socialism lost this war. So it's like, I'm sorry, when Germany lost the Second World War, it stopped being a country for some period of time, and only then it recovered. A number of things, starting with, even as far as I know, if in Germany anybody asks, please, Hitler, was he good or bad? He will go to jail. So you went through this point, you made a decision that fascism was this or that, and this question is not raised anymore. With the rare exception of some extremists. And in our country, socialism lost to capitalism, and it's obvious that we were not victors, so we bore some losses. All the laws were written by the American consultants, different institutes which worked under American grants. It's obvious even to the hedgehog that if the USSR hadn't collapsed, the American crisis would be there sooner, because when the USSR collapsed, it created a whole new market. And the American corporations, the Western corporations, could easily enter this market. And today we need to normalize our laws, so to say. You know, in my private opinion, there is so to say, the Fourth World War. It is in the area of financial capital. So there is a system, and every system works this way. It needs to compete with something to develop, because we are like that. It is in the human nature. It started with the ancient Rome, when there were gladiator fights. It's either you win or lose. And sure enough, today, no Europe are powerful enough to compete, to fight the American financial lobby. And whether Europe will maintain its freedom, financially, I mean, whether Russia will be able to maintain its financial freedom, to save itself from this American influence, this is the question we have in our agenda today. That's why G8 cannot arrange all the things, because America, the USA, must go bankrupt. A European country, couldn't live with these debts, with the exception of Germany. So, as far as I know and as far as I understand, for Germans, being in the European Union is not profitable, because they have to help all the others. And how can they, if in Greece people retire when they are 50? Why should you work for them? I do not understand it. Nobody in the world does, and you don't. And it's the same, roughly speaking. We are happy to have the natural resources, oil and gas. We export oil and gas and we get dollars. So in fact, we sell our real natural resources for some papers. For example, all the opposition candidates, they are not real. So, no, I didn't say they are not real. Probably there are some. Well, you know, I think that the experience there is today, I think today it's not the time when we should experiment with some elections. I believe that after the elections, a number of people in the opposition, they will have the opportunity to participate in the lawmaking activities. We have three parties which occupied some places in the State Duma, and they can take part in all these activities. I think that there will be some serious changes. You know, without the change, it will be... I know for sure that everybody understands it, even the Prime Minister, the President, that we need the change, we need the structural change from the point of view of the business, because we have very few things we sell to other countries which are ready products. So in fact we are sitting on this oil needle, and this is obvious and nobody feels comfortable about it. But in what way everything will move, I think, it's not that I think, I am sure. When they ask me about the regime, today the regime cannot get worse, because we have the internet. All information is accessible, even though we have the first and the second state channels on the television. But some people say that we can have the Iron Curtain once again, but this is not important in the modern world, because we already started the integration process, and today one cannot live in separation from the other world. So we will have to develop, to move in this direction. So we will have to normalize the business sphere, we will have to normalize the judicial system. And without that, we will not be competitive. I don't say that tomorrow we'll start producing Mercedes-Benz or BMW. We are lagging behind for some huge time, but there are some things we can do and can do rather well. If you look at this building, Europe doesn't have a building like that from the point of view of the architecture, the design, logistics, and all the other things. So, if 10 years ago they said that Russians cannot build anything, today they don't say so. And we are at least competitive in this area. You can compare our buildings to the Western companies. Ours, they are at least not worse than the ones built by the Germans, for example. But if we imagine that in a month Putin is the president of Russia, that the business will be free. Well, look, I am sitting here right now. I have it right now. We need to understand that in the 90s we were in a completely different situation. The country collapsed. We were on the brink of the civil war. For example, so to say, in the year 1999, each republic had its central bank, and each bank could issue its own money. Without the nuclear agreement, Ukraine, Kazakhstan, Belarus, they all would have their nuclear weapons. So we went through a huge amount of very difficult turning points of economic and all the other areas, and we lived through a very difficult question, the question of independence. And what about Putin? Well, at least I can say that he's the patriot of his country, and from this point of view I don't see any problems. For sure there are some problems. You can remember the Manezhnaya Square, but these problems are being solved. 5 years ago you couldn't have imagined those people on Bolotnaya or on Sakharova. Probably they didn't need it. There was no such demand in the country. People didn't have this need in this social life. Or probably it would have been forbidden. It's difficult to say now. But today, if you are from opposition, you can go out and speak out loud. Obviously enough, there are a lot of opposition movements financed by some institutions situated in some other countries. Let's try to be objective. Is it interesting for the Europeans to have the stable situation in Russia? This is the question. The answer is no one is interested in it. And the same is for the USA. Because if Russia is stable, Russia can become independent if it develops its own business. But today, they can influence the situation in the country. I don't say that these methods are bad. Those are dispute, but independence must be independence. And today it's not informational, it's economic independence. For example, today it's Germany. It has good economy and it feels independent. You can agree. And Greece has to sit like that. So you do understand. Today, the concept of political independence is united with the concept of economy independence. If previously we had the informational independence, today it's economy independence. And the countries which maintain this type of independence, they will be able to create the infrastructure for education, to develop their people, and they will remain independent. Because if we look in the long term, like 50 years, the countries unable to create comfortable situation for their citizens' development, they will run out of brains, because today there is no problem. You buy a ticket, a plane ticket, and go to the other country. And this is what the USA does today. They have this opportunity. There's a million people who left Russia to the USA and other countries. Today there are no boundaries. You can sit here and work in a different country. The main thing is to arrange everything in your house. If in your house it's neat and tidy, you can move to your yard, then to your city, and this is an important moment. I have a feeling, according to what is being done, first the mortgage for the doctors and teachers, it shows me that the government has the understanding that, I'll try to articulate this thought, the apartment for a person is a cornerstone. If you work in a country and you know for sure that you will earn your apartment not when you're 60, but by it working for 5 years, he will perceive the country as his own. This is what Europe went through, this is what the USA went through, and we have to go through it so that every student, after graduating the university, to be able to buy his own apartment. And this will give a huge boost to the building complex, to the construction complex. Because in Europe they have 35 square meters for a person, but you can expand it, but there is no need. You don't need 100 square meters for life. And we have a lot of old infrastructure, housing infrastructure, and it drags the economy back. So we need to reorganize the engineering infrastructure, the management, and so on. I don't know. Something like that. This is your second. We'll have 30 floors more. There are still engineering works. 50% of it already contracted. Enough to work on the project. So you overcame the crisis. Well, for sure, the companies which survived, they did survive. The hardest times are over. I believe that there will be no situation like in the year 2008, because people now know how to react. If something global happens, something unpredicted, but we are working, we are building. Thank you very much.